Maybe the class will come out decent, even though I'm tired. But let's begin. I'm actually going to show you an Excel sheet that I made. So I'm going to go over the Mishnah, and then I'll show you a contradiction from the Mishnah from this Excel sheet. So we asked the Shaila in the Gemara in the previous lesson. He said that how long is this man of stira? So how long, right? Because we keep on talking about that stira. If she's in the room with a man that she shouldn't be with, she becomes a suspected adulteress. But how long does she have to be with this guy in that room, in a private room, that her husband warned her not to be with that guy? So the Mishnah said, we brought down I think it was a brisa there, whatever. It says Kidei Kafas Dekel. Rabbi Shmuel says that time is the amount of time it takes to go around a dekel tree, a palm tree, some kind of a tree. The amount of time it takes to go around, that's the time. Rabbi Eliezer says, he says as much as time it takes to, I think it was talking about, we said watered down wine. So it was too thick, too hard, too powerful of a wine. Water it down, that's the amount of time the guy and this girl are going to be in the room. Rabbi Shua argues, so we have Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shua. The amount of time it takes to drink that cup of diluted wine, of watered down wine. And as he says, it says based on the amount of time it takes to roast an egg. Kiva says the amount of time it takes to swallow the egg. He says, no, it takes 3 eggs to swallow 3 eggs, not 1. Belazar says, in order to, I think we said it was a weaver that had 2 loose ends, a professional weaver had 2 loose ends. They came loose, or they got disconnected somehow. He's going to reknot them. How long it takes him to retie those 2 lost ends of him sewing over there, of him weaving. That's how long it is.
Ends of what, lady?
Ends of warping, okay. Chanid ben Pinchas Aimer. He said the amount of time it takes to pull out a like a splinter or something between her teeth, the amount of time it takes to pull something out of between her teeth. And number 9, the amount of time it takes to stick her hand into a bread basket and take out a loaf of bread. Now we explained last week, the previous Gemara, last class we had, the Gemara we explained, because the numbers are very important, because how long is she asur l'bayla? How long is she prohibited to be with her husband? So it's a very serious question. What's his man? And here's the machlekes between all these opinions. Now, what the Gemara is going to analyze these opinions, including at the end of the Gemara, what kind of bread was it? What kind of basket was it? How do you define exactly these times? How thick was this thing stuck in her teeth, and so on. But first we're going to question based on a brisa, and that's why it's easier. I made this list here because we're going to see a brisa that discusses the same exact question. And what does it say? It says five opinions first over there. It says, Kedei chazaras dekel, Divrei Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says the time it takes for the return of a tree. Rabbi Shua says, Kedei mizigas kois, the amount of times it takes to dilute the wine, right? And as the amount of time it takes to drink it, is basically to roast an egg. Rabbi Yehuda says to swallow it. Now the problem is that the opinions are all of a sudden switched up in the Brisa versus the Mishnah. Let's go through it. So remember who said. First question, I'm going to share with you the answers already. That some of the answers the Gemara is going to give. The first question is Kedei Kafas Dekel. Rabbi Shmuel says the amount of time it takes to go around the tree, and now. In the other, and then Rabbi Elazar argued and say, no, it's not the amount of time it takes to go around the tree. It's the amount of time it takes to dilute water. What's funny is that when you go to this next brisa, it says, Kedei chazaras dekel, the amount of time it takes for the return of a tree. These are the words of Rabbi Elazar, which makes no sense because Rabbi Shmuel said it's the amount of time for a palm tree. And Rabbi Elazar disagreed. And here all of a sudden comes Rabbi Elazar in the next brisa and is agreeing with Rabbi Shmuel. How does that make any sense? So not just does he argue in the first Mishnah with Rabbi Shmuel and say, no, it's not going around this tree, it's pouring a cup. And then in the brisa, we're saying all of a sudden he holds the same exact opinion as Rabbi Shmuel. And the Gemara answer is very simple. There's a difference between hakafas dekel, which is the wording in the first Mishnah, And this the Braisa, Chazoras Dekel and Hakofas Dekel. If you look at the exact wording, are actually two different things. Hakofas Dekel means going around the tree, amount of time it takes to go around the tree. And Chazoras Dekel is talking about when you take a branch and you pull it, and the branch starts flying to one side, and it flies back until it gets back in its place, is what actually the word of Chazoras Dekel, the return of this Dekel tree. So Hakofas Dekel and Chazoras Dekel, so you're right, they're both talking about a Dekel, but they're actually talking about two different movements of this Dekel tree. So Rebbe Lezer holds Chazoras Dekel is, and not Hakofas Dekel. Now, he would also say that Chazoras Dekel is the same time as his opinion in the first Mishnah of Mezigas Kais. So pouring a cup of water is the same amount of time as the return of a branch going back and forth. One time, you try to define it, exactly how much it is. So one time he says it's as much as diluting a cup, and the other time it says it's as much as a tree bouncing back and forth. Okay, that's the answer to that contradiction. But now we have another problem. Here Rabbi Lezer said, okay, Rabbi Shua here said, everything's so far clear. First two in the Mishnah and one in the Braisa. The third case in the Mishnah was Rabbi Shua says, Kidei l'shtoisai, in order the amount of time, right? Rabbi Lezer said, number two, option two, diluting a cup. Rabbi Shua said, no, the amount of time it is to drink it. Now, Rabbi Shua says in the Braisa, case number two, he disagrees with himself in case three, and he says the amount of time to the zigas hakois, to dilute the water, to dilute the wine. So I don't get it. In the Mishnah, you argue with Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer said it's the amount of time to dilute the water, and you said no, it's the amount of time to drink it. And now all of a sudden, the Braisa, you're saying exactly what Rabbi Lezer said, the amount of time to dilute the wine, where you argued on him in the Mishnah. I don't understand what you're saying. And the answer the Gemara is going to give is that, Rabbi Shua is not in the Mishnah, is not arguing with Rabbi Lezer, saying, I don't agree with you. You said the amount of time it takes to dilute the wine. I say it's the amount of time it takes to drink the wine. He says, no, add. It's the amount of time it's to mezigas kois, to dilute the wine and then to drink it. Because obviously what are you doing after you dilute it? You're drinking it. So he's like, I hear what you're saying. So let's say diluting the wine is 30 seconds. He's saying, no, add another 30 seconds and the amount of time it takes to drink the cup of wine. So Rabbi Shua is actually saying it's both. And now we could answer the same, that's exactly what Rabbi Shua meant in the case of the Braisa. He says it's the amount of time it takes to dilute the wine, and he meant and to drink it, because why are you diluting the wine? In order to drink it. So in the Braisa, he just said the amount of time it takes to dilute the wine, meaning and obviously drink it. In the Mishnah, he's arguing with Rabbi Lezer, who holds it's just diluting the wine, and saying no, add the drinking part to it too. So Rabbi Yeshua in our Mishnah that says the amount of time it takes to drink the wine is the same exact opinion as Rabbi Yeshua in the Braisa, who says the amount of time it takes to dilute the wine, because there he's actually meaning that in both cases he's meaning diluting and drinking. And now we don't have a contradiction between Rabbi Yeshua of the Braisa and Rabbi Yeshua of the Mishnah. Next case, they might also both be Braisas. I don't remember it. I don't have the Gemara in front of me right now, but either way, this is the same idea. Now we have to work with the next problem. Banazi in the Mishnah says, let's place besa in order to roast an egg. And Ben Azai here said, in order to drink a cup of wine. I think the Gemara is going to say, the answer to this question, we'll see in a minute, if I remember correctly, is going to say that it's the same amount of time. The same amount of time, it's not a contradiction. Same amount of time it takes to roast an egg is the same amount of time it takes to drink it. And let's go back. I don't want to make any mistakes now. So let's go back. We'll jump back here. Let's start with the Gemara and did what we did so far and answer the questions, and then we'll go back to where we're holding over here. Okay, so let's go back to the Gemara right over here. Viri minu, and it's a contradiction. One Braisa to another. Vinistira. And he starts off the same way. Vinistira, it says in the Torah that she hid with this man, she was alone with him, she was hidden with him. And the Braisa says that she's now an she's a suspected adulteress. So the Braisa asks, how much is the time that they have to be alone, secluded in the room? The Gemara said, we didn't hear, we don't know. However, it does give us some definition of the requirement. It says vihinitma because we're suspecting that she maybe became defiled, she became impure, she became defiled while they were in the room in themselves. So Hava Yomer, he starts with the same way the previous Gemara started off. I would have assumed to say it's Kidei Tumah, enough time for her to come impure defiled, meaning Kidei Bia, the amount of time it takes for him to have intercourse together with her, Kidei Bia. Now, remember the Gemara last time, just remember they said that we're not counting the time it takes for him to seduce her. He already seduced her perhaps the day before. This is all planned out. Now they're just doing the act. So that's why it's just limited to the amount of time it takes to do the act. And then he said, Kidei ha'ara, it's not even completion of the intercourse, but it is just the beginning, just a little bit right at the beginning of him being able to penetrate. Kidei chazaras dekel. Now he starts giving you the list of the options of what does that actually mean. Kidei chazaras dekel, Rabbi Eliezer. Here Rabbi Eliezer says the amount of time, as I already given the answer for the tree. Here we still think chazaras dekel means to run around the tree. And then the answer is going to be no, we're just mean the tree waving back and forth. Rabbi Shua Omer, Kadei Mizigas HaKois, Rabbi Shua said the amount of time it takes to dilute a cup of wine. Benazi Omer, Kadei L'shtoisa, it's the amount of time it takes to drink it. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Kadei Litzas Beisa, the amount of time it takes to roast an egg. Rabbi Huda B'Mseira Omer, Kadei L'goyim, the amount of time it takes to swallow that egg. Now let's go deal with the questions. I would have thought, Hainu HaKafas Dekel, this running around the tree, Hainu Chazaras Dekel is the same as Chazaras Dekel means running around the tree, both of them. Kafas Dekel, Chazaras Dekel. Chazara maybe mean like running around. And then our question is, Hasam Rabbi Shmuel, Kadei Kafas Dekel. First, Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel is the one that said running around the tree. Upali, Rabbi Elazar Alei, and Rabbi Elazar argued with him. And he says, no, I don't agree with you, right? Let's go back to this thing for a second. Rabbi Shmuel says, Kadei Kafas Dekel, and Rabbi Elazar says, I don't agree with you. He says, Kadei Mizikas HaKois. He says, you're wrong. And Hachar Amar, then all of a sudden, this next brayso, all of a sudden, Rabbi Elazar Kadei Chazaras Dekel, he says, going around the tree. So I don't get it. Rabbi Elazar, are you arguing with Rabbi Shmuel, or are you agreeing with actually Rabbi Shmuel as you do in the next brayso? So Amar Abaye, so Abaye answers this question. Hakafa beregel, hakafa means he ran around. That hakafa circled beregel with his feet. Chazara, when it says chazara, it means beruach with the wind. As Rashi explains that the wind made the branch bounce back and forth, and that bouncing back and forth is what caused it to. That's the time he's trying to define how long it takes in order for them to be together in the very short wind. But Rashi, so now Rashi asks, the whole Gemara is you're going to try to define, well, what does that mean? Each of these times, because remember, as soon as they're long enough for that time, all of a sudden they can't stay married anymore. They can't live as husband and wife. So it makes a big difference. So Rashi says, do we mean that it's, if you're telling me now it's a branch that's bouncing back and forth? Does it mean once, what moved once and then came back? Or do we want to say went back and forth and then went back to its original place? So exactly how long is this bouncing branch that we're talking about? One way, two ways, and going back to where it started with. What is this? What exactly timing do we saying is the timing of this branch here? And the Gemara says, take it. We don't know. We're not sure exactly how to define it. I think in halacha, it's going to be like Rabbi Kiva. We'll see. I think I might have mentioned it in the last class. Halacha is like Rabbi Kiva, and I think today the poskim maybe learned that it's between 2 and 9 minutes. Some are more machmer. I think I heard in this class over there that Rabbi Moshe was more makel. Again, because how much are you defining it? Is it including the seduction? Is it not including the seduction? Like all these questions. How long is the definitions that we're given? Okay, let's go on. So now we have the second contradiction that we showed before. Hasam, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Kedei Mizikas Kais. Now in the Mishnah, the second clause was Rabbi Elazar said it's so much to pour a cup of wine. Hacha, here, Kedei Chazaras Dekel. Here he says it's as much as a tree, Chazaras Dekel, the tree jumping back and forth. Let's bring up this sheet here. So Rabbi Elazar said Mizigas Kais, and here he defines it as diluting a cup, and it seems to contradict the other brayso that says Chazaras Dekel, that it is a tree that branches bounce back and forth. Which one is it? And the Gemara is not a problem. There's no contradiction. Or idi v'idi chad shiuruhu. Chad shiuruhu. They're both the same measurement. The who says just because they're giving two different examples doesn't mean it's a contradiction between the two. They're both defining the same amount. One time he's explaining it like this, one time he's explaining it like that, and therefore it's not a contradiction. Good. Okay, so far we answered the first two cases in the Mishnah and the first case in this place. Hasam, now let's go on over there. The first case, Rabbi Shua said, the amount of time it takes to drink the cup of wine. And here he says it's the amount of time to dilute the water. So let's go to the thing. So in the first case, and in the Shua says the amount of time it takes to drink the cup of wine, and here he says the amount of time it takes to dilute the cup of wine. So which one is it? How are you going to answer that contradiction? So he says, Amo, let us answer as I explained. When he was saying, he means in both cases, the amount, it means in both cases. It means in both cases the amount of time. Okay, well, give me a few more minutes, okay? And then I'll come down. We'll go back in a few minutes. So he says they're both really talking about the same time. Yet the amount of time it takes to dilute a cup of water and the amount of time it takes to dilute it. And what was the other case we said? To dilute it and also to drink it. And therefore, it's not a contradiction. One time he said diluting it, one time he said to drink it, but they're the same. Because diluting it, both cases, he means diluting it and drinking it. Yeah, Tzippa, watch Uziel in the basement. You can come down if you watch Uziel in the basement. Okay. Good. Let's go on to the next question. In one case, Rabbi Yeshua said, in order to drink it, and Hacha Amar Kedei Mizigas Kois. That was the contradiction. So okay. So I already explained that answer. So it means in order to pour it, dilute it, and to drink it, and that was the answer we gave. So the Gemara says, well, let me ask you a question. Why couldn't we say a different answer? Why can't we say that they're one and the same measurement? Let me show you what he means. So how did we answer option 3 of Rabbi Yeshua? Here he meant to drink it, and here he meant to dilute it, right? Why can we answer that diluting it and drinking it is the same time, like we answered before? He's giving two different examples. He's giving two different examples for the same scenario, for the same case. Okay, he's saying drink it, and he's keep the door closed, please. Close the door there. He's saying diluting it and drinking it, the same exact case. Why couldn't he answer that? And the answer is because he can't say that drinking it and diluting it is the same case, because look, in case 3 in this Mishnah is arguing with case 2. Rabbi Lezer says Mezigas Kais, and Rabbi Yeshua says in order to drink it. So if I were to say drinking it and diluting the cup is the same, then why is Rabbi Yeshua arguing with Rabbi Lezer? It has to be Rabbi Yeshua saying to Rabbi Lezer, in other words, if they were the same amount measurements, this drinking it and this Rabbi Yeshua of diluting it, then why is Rabbi Yeshua arguing to Rabbi Lezer? That's exactly what Rabbi Lezer said. If he thinks that diluting it and drinking it is the same measurement, it must be that Rabbi Yeshua was telling Rabbi Lezer that not just is it the time diluting it, but plus add to that the time it takes to drink it. And that would be also the intent in this Paisa, and then that would answer that why it's not a contradiction between the two Rabbi Yeshuas. Let's see that inside. Because why did they say that they're both one measurement? Because im kain, if I'll say they're both one measurement, Rabbi Lezer, that would be Rabbi Lezer. Because that's what Rabbi Lezer said. So I can't say it means that drinking and diluting are the one, because that's exactly what Rabbi Lezer said, diluting it. And then he wouldn't be arguing with him. So he must be saying, the only way to answer the contradiction is that he's saying it means not just diluting it, it means also drinking it. And then that's what he means too in that other brayso. Okay, now let's deal with the next contradiction. Awesome, Amar Ben Azai. Over there, he says, Ben Azai says, the time it takes to roast an egg. And here, he says the amount of time it takes to drink it. And the answer is roasting an egg and swallowing, drinking the egg. It's the same measurement. Let's go back to the case here. Ben Azai here says roasting an egg. Ben Azai here says is drinking it. It's not a problem because drinking it and roasting it is the same measurement. Now, I'm I'm not 100% sure about this. Maybe Ben Azai meant drinking the cup of wine. Yeah, I believe that's what he means. Just drinking a cup of wine and roasting an egg is the same measurement, is the same exact measurement. And therefore, it's not a problem. Mara says, weiter. Well, what about this contradiction of Rabbi Akiva, who I think the halacha is actually like, according to some or all opinions? Hasam Rabbi Akiva kedei l'gaima. One place Rabbi Akiva says, in order to swallow the egg. And Hacham kedei l'tzlis basin here, he says it's to roast an egg. Let's go back in here. Rabbi Akiva said, kedei l'gaima in the Mishnah, to swallow. Here Rabbi Akiva says it's in order to roast the egg. So which one is it? Now, I guess you can say this and this is the same, because Rabbi Akiva's argument with Ben Azai. Let's see what the Gemara says inside. So again, we have the same problem we have earlier. We can't say here that they're both the same. Let's see what the Gemara says inside. So he says, Emil, let us say, same answer we gave when we couldn't say that they were the same opinion. The amount of time it takes to roast an egg and to swallow it. And therefore, it's the same. They're not a contradiction because he actually means both in both cases. When he says roast an egg and swallowing it, and when he says swallowing it, he meant to roast it. Why don't we say that both are the same measurements? We can't, because in Cain, Hainu Ben Azai, then he would be saying the same exact thing as Ben Azai, as I just explained before. And finally, the last case where he's contrasting the two cases, two braces. That one case, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says swallowing 3 eggs one after another. Here he says swallowing 1 egg. So now we have a problem. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me show you just inside the two cases. Here, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says, and here, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says, to swallow 1 egg. So he seems to contradict himself. And the answer is, let me just find the Gemara again. I lost my place here. Yeah. The Dvar of the Rabbi Akiva Kamar. So he says a different answer this time from the other answers he gave. He was not sharing his own opinion. He was talking to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, the Kamar Misharim B'tzliya Ubigmiya. He's telling Rabbi Akiva, based on the way we explained Rabbi Akiva just before, that Rabbi Akiva means roasting an egg and swallowing it. Why does he have to pick two parts, roasting the egg and swallowing it? Why don't he just say, just say, just a case of swallowing eggs, and just add more eggs that he's swallowing more eggs. Just say a case of swallowing 3 eggs one after another. The Hainu, which this would be the same thing as tzliya ugmiya, roasting and swallowing the egg. So he never said that I hold. He never said that he holds that you have to roast 3 eggs in one case. Let's go back there. Swallow. Shalish beitzim zochar zu. And here he says swallowing one egg. No, his opinion is like here, where we're holding now, the second brayso. Really, it's swallowing 1 egg. When he said here, the case of swallowing 3 eggs, he was talking to Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, who we just explained, means to roast the egg and swallow it. He was saying, according to you, it's much easier and much more clear to just say that you mean swallowing 3 eggs, rather than talking about roasting it and swallowing it. And that's the way we answer that all these things are not a contradiction to each other. The Gemara is just going to finish asking. Let me bring the last 3 cases and see what the Gemara asks, okay? We spoke about tying the ends of the whatever it's called, the woof, the ends of the sewing thing. Then we said about her sticking her hands in her mouth to pull out something that's in there, or sticking your hand into the loaf of bread. Let's see. The Gemara is going to try to define, even though there's no contradiction to our brayso, going to define it on its own exactly what is the definition and the timing of each one of those. Okay. Rabbi Elazar ben Yirmiyah, Omer, he says, the amount of time it takes to tie the ends, the two ends of those threads that are loose. So Rav Ashi said, what does that mean? The merchak or the mekarev, were these two ends of the threads very far from each other, or were they right next to each other? I mean, that's an interesting definition you're giving, but are they at a great distance or are they right next to each other? The Gemara says teiku. We don't know, not sure. So again, how do you define, when you bring the case, how do you define it? Chanin ben Pinchas Omer, Kadesh Teisha Yodel Techpiyah, Little Kesam, the next, second to last case, definition, defining the timing was for her to stick her hand in her mouth and pull out something that's there, a splinter that's in her teeth. Rav Ashi says, well, again, define that. The mihadik or the mahadik. I think that means is it stuck in tight? You know, you could have like a splinter or something, you know. Is it how is it? I mean, how hard is it to get it out? I mean, how stuck is that whatever's in her teeth? Is it very tight or not tight? Like how do you define it from the time? Take it. You don't know again. Plima says the amount of time it takes to stick a hand in a bread basket and take out a loaf of bread. Well, Rav Ashi questions this definition. The mihadik or the mahadik. Is it the bread in tight, stuffed in tight in the basket or not? It's an old basket or a new basket. It makes a difference what kind of basket it is. Is it hot bread or cold bread? You know, it might be harder to pull out one kind of loaf than the other one. You're trying to define it as such. Is it chitim? Is it wheat or is it tsari? Is it barley? What's the bread made out of? That would make a difference. Maybe how quick you can pull it out. Is it a soft kind of bread or is it a hard kind of bread? What exactly is it? Teiko, again, we don't have it exactly defined. So now the Gemara is going to end. We're going to end today's class just with, again, how did they even get to these definitions, right? If someone must be wondering, how exactly did they even get to these definitions? Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef said in the name of Rabbi Yechon, everybody defined it in themselves. They knew their own life. They were married, whatever. They had their own situations, and they knew how quick it could take. So every guy came up with a different definition because each person's different, and therefore that's the number they got to. That's what they assumed that the quickest amount it could take, or maybe people could take, is because they know themselves, and therefore they knew how to define how quick it could be. That the Gemara of Va'ika ben Azai Delay Nasim, he says something funny. One of the opinions of Ben Azai who never got married. Ben Azai never married. So how would he know if you're telling me that each person got the numbers from their own life? They never had the opportunity to practice it in their life, so how could they have the number? So the Gemara says three answers to that. Some say, he was married and then he separated. He said, his nafshi chashki v'Torah, he says, I need to learn Torah. I can't be married to a woman. It's too much work. And he divorced her. He has to sit and learn Torah. And therefore, he didn't know from his married life. Some say, he heard it from his teacher. Now, something funny here is that his teacher is Rabbi Kiva. Famous that his teacher is Rabbi Kiva. The problem is Rabbi Kiva argues with him. So if the Gemara is saying that his teacher, he heard it from his teacher, and his teacher is Rabbi Kiva, and he's arguing with Rabbi Kiva, so how does that make any sense? So they say he must have had another teacher. He must have. So in other words, there's a way for him to learn it. He could be there was another teacher that he followed, and he heard this opinion, and he's sharing this opinion that he heard from another teacher. So it's not that he had to experience it, but this is what was passed down. But say, that the secret of Hashem is to the ones that fear. How they know their information is not by their own practical life, and they know it from their own life. Not either way. That is the end of the Gemara. That they know it because they learn Torah and they know things that they just know it in the secrets of Hashem to the ones that fear Him. And that is the end of today's Gemara.